Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, in fabulous Las Vegas, right in the middle of the World Series of Poker. And you guys are finally going to get to meet someone that I have mentioned, 7,000 or 8,000 times on the podcast. He is a dear friend of mine. He's also one of the best poker players in the world, and I defy you to prove me wrong about that. He's from Stockholm, Sweden. Anton Wigg, how are you, sir?
Whoop, whoop, whoop. What an intro. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm very good.
Yeah.
Had a nice couple of days. Like you said, it's nice to be in fabulous Las Vegas.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm always stoked to talk to you as well. You're one of my best friends, and I always just cherish every single second spending time with you. So yeah, here we are.
And so nice to be together in person for this weird summer in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really special time. It feels like the world kind of stopped in a sense. It didn't stop for me personally, but like meeting all these friends again, like yourself, a bunch of my other like dear friends I haven't seen in a long time. And you're just kind of used to having this relationship, right? When you're gonna get to see each other like at least a couple of times a year, and that hasn't been the case. So when I meet my friends, everyone just has like big news, like what changed in their lives, like how did the being locked up for a while changed your perspective on things. And yeah, it's been really good getting back to some live poker, spending time with friends, making the most of it.
You sound like things didn't necessarily come to a screeching halt for you. So what was different about your lockdown as opposed to everybody else's?
Well, like when it started, well, I mean, we all didn't have any clue what was going on, right? Like I was at Bay 101, and I've heard, like the news about COVID, and you kind of like not know what it is, and it's like, ooh, there's some cases here and there. And then I remember sitting in that tournament at Bay, and people start whispering like, Trump is shutting down the borders. Trump is shutting down the borders. I'm like, shit, I don't want to get stuck in a place I don't live, like not having my setup and all that stuff. So when I busted out the tournament, made sure to find one of the direct flights back to Europe. And as I realized that this was going to be a longer kind of ongoing thing, and that I was going to be landlocked for a time, I thought, like, this is a really good opportunity for me. I'm always moving. I'm always on the road. And like they say, like the grass is always greener on the other side. Like that's kind of how I saw this situation playing out. I'm going to be in one place for a long time, and therefore I can plan my life in a different way. So, I mean, we can get into a little bit like what I did as well, but I saw it as an opportunity. I think it's a good way to look at things. Like, your circumstances are always going to change. Things will always change in the world one way or another. It might be good, it might be bad, but to be in this like triple threat ready mode always just makes it so that you can make the most of it. And I really feel like I did. Yeah.
So what do you mean by triple threat ready mode? Help people understand what you mean by that.
Triple threat is a basketball term where you want to be ready to, like, once you receive the ball, you want to be ready to dribble, pass, or shoot, right? So you always have like your three options. So when you get the ball, you want to be in triple threat mode. I learned this by watching a Ben Solsky video on Run It Once, where he's on his treadmill and he's talking about, this ready, set, go kind of mindset and how it applies to poker. And yeah, I resonate a lot with that. I think it's like a smart way of conducting your life and just like taking ownership of everything from a poker hand that you play to your life in general.
Yeah, I love it. Now, in my world, the performing arts, a triple threat is someone who can sing, act, and dance. I didn't think that's what you were talking about. So you meant it in basketball terms.
I can almost do all those things. I mean, like, granted, not as good as a paid performer,
Right.
but I'm all right.
You can hold your own. You can hold your own. You know, it's funny. Speaking of performing, you and I actually met because our mutual friend, Tony Dunst, as seen on TV, Tony Dunst, we were in Australia and we were all playing in the Aussie Millions, the side events. The main event hadn't started yet. And it seemed like a good night for me to invite Tony. He told me he didn't have any tournament scheduled for the next day. Happened to be the day that I was going to be performing at the Last Laugh Comedy Club in downtown Melbourne. And he said, yeah, I'll bring some bros, you know. I was like, okay, that sounds great. Just tell me how many tickets. I'll hook you guys up, whatever the case may be. So, you know, Tony invites 7 or 8 crushers, just absolute, to me, like my eyes were bugging out of my head. Some of the people that were in that group that were in my comedy show, because they were my poker heroes. But I didn't know you. You were young, new on the scene, basically, at least for me. But everyone was pointing you out to me. Like, that's the guy. He's the one that you can learn from, because they all respected your game. What all those other guys had in common was they all respected your game. So I ended up spending a lot of time with you on that trip. And then, of course, we became friends. And then the next thing I know, I'm in Sweden. And you're saying, why don't you stay with me? And I get to watch you play online poker and learn a lot about poker just from observing how you play. And then you're somehow able to play 24 tables and still explain to me what you're doing on table number 12. I don't know how you do so many all at once. But, I want to say, more importantly, what I learned from you is about work-life balance. And it's good to be an expert at something, as you are, but you're also very, very much almost like romantically attached to the idea of, I'm not just a poker player. So talk about that a little bit. Why is that so important to you?
Well, I don't remember who told me this, but someone told me this a long time ago. And they said there's 2 types of poker players. There's one kind that can only play poker, and there's another kind that can do anything. And I've always found myself drawn to the kind that can do anything, that is versatile, that has things going on, that has an idea with what they want, out of this experience. So as that was being put to me, I'm a very simple man, I'm a very, very simple person. Yes. And I live my life by these fundamental truths. So when someone presents something to me and I see that as something that is like very much true, I resonate a lot with that. I try to also integrate it. So when that person, whoever it is, if you're out there, like, thank you so much. I realized that I wanted to be the kind of poker player that could do anything and that can do anything. And I think I've made good on following that path. And as we said earlier, it was a really good time for me to start taking that to the next level during this past 18 months, being landlocked and having access to a lot of great people around me, picking their brain on anything from, biohacking to visualization, breath work, yoga, poker theory, of course.
Yes.
And just like how that translates to the results that you want, So that's really something that's dear to me, and why it's dear to me is not just because I want to like optimize my own life and make sure to make money, and I want to like try to change the conversation from making money and that being valuable to how do we generate value for each other. And if that means me giving up a very minuscule edge here and there, like, I don't care. That's not why I'm put here. And the way I see it, I'm also not super interested in being in the spotlight. Like, I'm not a person that's drawn towards the spotlight. I've tried that. I've tried it in like a professional role and just didn't love it that much because I felt like I wasn't doing the thing that I wanted to do. I had to like generate a persona that fit the brand that I was representing, which is all good and well, like to each their own. I'm not knocking anyone that does that, but it just wasn't for me.
So you want to be a triple threat, but also a free agent.
Well, I just want to do what I like to do, right? Like that to me is what is valuable. That's what fills my life with purpose, with happiness, with the people I want to surround myself with people that are like very happy to contribute for just the sake of growth and just the sake of doing something and doing it well. And I think that to me is really, really valuable. And as I said, like I could be in the spotlight, but for the right reasons. And if that's not the case, then I'll happily stay out of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's really good. So walk us through kind of maybe a typical day in the life of Anton Wigg in the middle of a pandemic, and you're doing breath work and yoga and studying and learning from these people that were in your life at that dark time, right? Tell us what it was like, where you don't have the usual places you can go. You don't have all the normal amenities of life that we've come to expect. How did that work, and how did you stay so positive throughout?
Well, I mean, on the note of staying positive, I can't help myself.
It's true. It's true.
It's like it's not a choice. It's just more like well, I guess it is a choice. Like I constantly make the choice of making sure that if I'm not feeling right, I do something about it. Like being a bit radical in my self-reliance and how I structure my life in a way that, like do whatever you need to do. If you need to clean the house to make yourself feel good, like that's what you should do. If you need to get out in nature, or like whatever it is that kind of like resets your brain and makes you vibrate on that kind of frequency, I think it's important to like find that thing. So anyways, on the note of positivity, I think it's easy for me because I've integrated so many tools that can help me switch my mindset from one second to another. Like just making that choice and saying like, oh, I don't like how I'm feeling right now, so I should try to acknowledge the fact that something led to this and learn from that, but also you switch my mindset to something that drives me and that makes me feel good instead. But as for a typical day, it was, I would say, very unsustainable long term to do what I did. I worked, I guess I averaged like 10, 11, probably 11, 12 hours a day, just like doing these systematic type of things, like getting up in the morning, doing some meditation, doing my 30-minute to an hour yoga, cooking a small meal, then sitting down, having meetings with so many people that I was interested in developing a more systematic approach with, learning from them, setting. So like the first questions you need to ask yourself if you want to work with people is, what is these people as an entity want, right? Like how can I make them work in a way that they enjoy what we do? How can I make them passionate about what it is that we're doing, and how can I make it so that they feel like they're part of something, like, and this is what I'm good at. Like this is, I think, one of my biggest strengths is to identify what drives people and then translate that into something that they themselves can resonate with and can work with. And I think a lot of people don't ask themselves those fundamental questions, and my job is to send out surveys to a bunch of people, look at the feedback that I'm getting and thinking, what is this energy that they're putting out? Like how can I translate that into something that is like, I don't know, I use the Matrix as a reference point, creating these visual identity manifestos that has all the important feedback from these people, and then saying like, oh, so I guess you're on a hero's journey, and what better hero's journey than the Matrix, or now Dune as well. Fantastic book, by the way. Just absolutely amazing. I think it's an even better hero's journey than The Matrix.
Yeah, I mean, Dune was an underrated book, I think, when it came out. And then I think they made a movie, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago. But now there's a new one that's coming out. So Dune is back on people's radar, right?
Yeah, don't see the old David Lynch one. It's absolutely horrid. It's so bad, bro. Like, don't watch that one. I watch it and I'm very rarely like turn off a movie after I'm halfway in, and that was one of them movies.
Yeah.
It's also the one work that he's like kind of distanced himself from. He's like, oh, that was a mistake, you know.
Oh,
like,
that's
I
interesting.
should not have been doing this.
Yeah, so I never saw the movie.
Good, don't.
And I won't. But there are a lot of movies I haven't seen. But I definitely read that book. Or to be more precise, my brother used to read that book. My brothers and I shared one bedroom. I have two brothers. We all shared one bedroom growing up. And my older brother, I'm in the middle, my older brother would read to my younger brother and me. And we definitely did that whole book. We'd do like a chapter a night as a bedtime story. So I'm learning this hero's journey when I was maybe, I don't know, 11, 12 years old. And yeah, that book, the plot of that story has stuck with me all these years. And it is a great, great novel, great hero story. I don't know, futuristic, science fiction, whatever you want to call it, but it's really, really great. Now, I want to go back to something you were saying because I think probably everyone's a little confused. What do you mean that you were having meetings with people that you wanted to get feedback from? You sound like a CEO. Are you a CEO?
I've been described as a startup.
Yeah.
So I think I'm more of a startup. You know, in any type of structure that you're looking to build, you have to have someone that is responsible for X, Y, Z things. Let's call me Y. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the Y person in this organization, and I'm just looking to build things and to learn from people around me. And that's not just, you know, doing work in poker. It is also sharing resources in terms of having a coach that helps us with yoga, visualization, like all these things that you need in order to perform on a high level in a very competitive field, which poker is right now.
More competitive than ever.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not going to stop. I mean, like if someone thinks that's going to be the case, then it's just not the truth. We have access to so much information, data, computers that can now do very complex problem solving without using, you know, like an insane amount of CPU. And as technology progresses, that's just going to be the case. And then, of course, like, you know, you come to Las Vegas and you always hear these people, right? Like you sit down at the table and there's some guys like, yeah, I'm doing meditation every day. I'm working with Pio. And, you know, like they're like really like upselling themselves. And then like they get bad beated once. And it's not even like a bad beat. And all of a sudden, like, you know, fuck Pio, fuck meditation. Like, you're a fucking asshole.
Pure tilt, right?
Well, right,
Yeah.
right. So it's like, you know, where do you get your edge? You get your edge by staying a bit even keel, and some people, they, I think, need to like stay more even keel than others, and other people want to be a little bit more in their emotions. But once that starts affecting their decision making and that type of thing, then you're just leaving a lot of EB at the table, right?
Yeah, I heard a poker player. You just reminded me. I heard a player at the table the other day say, you know, I'm not a bad sport. I just really hate to lose. And this one stuck with me because I don't know one person who likes to lose. Like, of course you hate to lose, but isn't it really about how well you can handle it and move forward rather than staying in the past? I mean, what are your thoughts on, do you love losing? Because I don't.
I mean, my comment to him would have just been like, oh, welcome to tournament poker, sir.
Even the best lose almost every time, right?
Exactly. And you know, like, it's a good point in that. I think we all suffer from this. Like, no matter how rational you are, like that hand when you bust a tournament still stings, and all the things that lead up to it is just like kind of like this blur of things. You're like, oh well, that guy that, you know, ran his ace king into my ace queen, like, see you later, buddy, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, it just says something about humans in general. Like, of course we like to win, of course we like to feel good, but if you can deal with that in a way where you're still gracious in defeat. You always see these guys and at the tables, and they're so happy. They win a couple of pots, and they're all chatty, and they're all happy. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, like care about the tournament or anything like that, but what I would like to see from people is a little bit more grace and a little bit more balance in that, to be like, you can still remain positive even though you just lost a pot. Like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry that happened to you. It's really dreadful, and I hope that doesn't stick with you for the rest of your life. But how you handle with adversity is another, like, that's just gonna determine how you do in life in general.
And I've been with you, Anton, when you busted on the bubble of some big tournament you're playing. And, for 5-10 minutes, you're, steaming a little bit, disappointed, angry, whatever kind of emotion will come out. And literally 10 minutes later, you're like, hey, you want to go get some food and let's go hang out. I got some friends that are going to meet us. It's just where some people might just want to lock themselves in a room and be miserable for the rest of the day. Your time of like bouncing back from some tremendous poker disappointment seems unbelievably short to me compared with most of my other poker playing friends. Do you think that has a lot to do with kind of this approach to life that involves like this discipline of doing the yoga, the meditation, the breathing, and all of those other things? Do you think that impacts your ability to kind of rebound from some bad news?
That's a really good question. I think the most important thing is not like the practice in itself. I think the important things is the things that you learn by, diving a little bit deeper or discovering, like how these things work and how they kind of like relate to you as an individual. Like there's no one fits all type of solution.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I learned going through this 28-day meditation program with the Waking Up app was that what had held me back previously, that I learned to kind of like change my neural pathways to not fire in that sense, was that I'm not a very judgmental person, but I was judging myself. So when I did something I didn't think was good, instead of kind of acknowledging that and learning from that and moving forward, what I did was kind of like beat myself up for that, or being hard on myself for it. And I never like really learned from my mistakes that way, because I just wanted to subconsciously shovel those out of the way and move on with my life. And learning that you don't have to judge something in order to see it clearly. So like taking those 10 minutes a day, where you sit down and what you're trying to do is kind of like empty your mind. Mm-hmm. I'm like doing these like air quotes here. Yeah. What you're really doing is allowing whatever is to be. And it's like kind of a radical acceptance way of approaching this mind thing that we have, that is like 100% of your waking day, sleeping day goes through your mind. So if you can put your mind and like just do like basic maintenance, right? Like go to the gym, work out every now and then, make sure that it's not like an untrained mind. It just makes it so that you have this, again, triple threat type of mindset, where your mind is like, oh, the ball is being thrown to me. I wasn't really ready for it, but I guess I can now pass, shoot, or dribble, and I don't have to hold on to something that doesn't serve me. I can choose to pass the ball if I need to. I can stand there and dribble the ball, or I'm ready to shoot. And that's a huge one as well. Like it is something people always say, you miss 100% of the shots that you always take. But I think that's like, it runs deeper than that. It runs to, like you said, like I could go home and feel bad for myself for busting this tournament, or, like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy 3-outed me in like huge pot or whatever. Like, why am I not winning any flips? But that would just, like, who's suffering from that, right? There's no one else in the world that's going to be like, oh, poor Anton, like we're just gonna be here and like, we're gonna be here at his funeral and say a few nice words about his like what a great life he had. It's like, no, man, like no one really cares as much about you as you think they do, and that's really comforting to me. It might sound really, like, someone might see it as like, oh, that's so negative, but it's like, people really don't. I find it very comforting that you can make mistakes and people won't think of it nearly as much as you do. So getting out of our own head and into this more like ready mode to say, okay, well, maybe I didn't like that myself, so how can I change that, and how can I stay in the present moment and move forward and not have to like dwell in that memory of like, oh, that stupid thing that I just said, and like I can't believe that I said that to this person. And then you wait, like you're going for a month and it's just like still there, and you come to this person at a party or dinner party or whatever, you're like, man, I'm so sorry, like that thing I said is like, it was so stupid. And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but you seem like a really nice guy, and I appreciate like you thought about that still, but don't worry about it, like it's fine.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care about us as much as we think. But I'm very guilty of that myself. Like anytime I go to a social engagement, especially if there are any important people there, I always second guess myself. Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. This famous guy, I said something, I was trying to make a joke, but maybe he doesn't think I'm funny. And like all my stupid insecurities come into play when probably the guy doesn't even remember me after the party's over. Like it's probably so immaterial, but in my brain, I'm making it bigger than what it needs to be or what it actually is. And that's, I think, something that we can all learn not to do, because you just end up wasting valuable resources like your brain cells on something that's literally unimportant.
Yeah, and I think people are so much more kind of like subconsciously aware of these situations. So say you're someone, like you said, someone famous, someone with influence. Like, who do you want to hang out with? Well, someone that doesn't see you as this persona that is famous and like influential, because that way you're like, oh, do they want something from me? Like, is there an angle that I have to like stay mindful of? Instead, just being there and being present and treating this other person like a person, I think is not just nice towards that person, which it is, but if you're gonna think about serving yourself and getting into the room that you might want to be in, it's something that's going to serve you as well. Like just being, again, air quotes, cool is something that people feel at ease with. It's something that you give to other people, and by doing that, you allow them to, be a little bit more themselves, be a little bit more open. They know that this guy isn't going for an angle or whatever, and
judging you or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. So as we're going through this, still stay mindful of that. Pretty much everything I do is self-serving one way or another, and differentiating between self-serving good and self-serving bad, I think, is the balance that we're always trying, like that I'm personally trying to maintain, so that I'm not walking around judging myself or other people in the situations that I get into, while also remaining clear that I have my boundaries, I have my limitations, or I have conversations that I would prefer not to have. I accept that you might be in another place, and that you might find these things much more interesting than I do, but I need to make sure to live my life the way I want to live it, without imposing myself too much on other people.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, you have so much wisdom. You're younger than I am, much, much younger than I am. And yet we were immediately friends. When we met, I feel like we hit it off right away. We've been friends ever since. And I consider you a mentor. And I think it's very unusual for two men who are, divergent in age, for the older one to look up to the younger one. But there's just something that I've always admired about you, which is your wisdom and the way that you're always working on yourself. That quality in itself, to me, is admirable, because not everyone I know cares about trying to improve. You treat life as though the goal is to be the best that you can. Not at poker necessarily, but at life. And that's a wonderful quality to have. So I want to make sure that my listeners don't hate me forever because I have Anton Wigg on the program and we don't talk about poker.
We'll get there,
so I think we have to get to the poker.
Well,
but,
I mean, before getting to the poker, I just want to say that that's very reciprocated. I think on that note, it's very important to kind of make sure that in your relationships that you have in your life, that you're also that you're like getting something back, like you have a reciprocal relationship. Both parties are like these, like, instead of 50-50, it's 60-60, right? Like both parties come into a situation and like we're trying to help each other as much as possible, right? So you say you look up to me, and I'm very happy for that. It's a very, very nice compliment for me to hear, because that's what I'm striving to do, right? Like getting a receipt on that is very nice. And on the flip side of that, I feel the exact same way about you. Like the way you are in the world, the way people relate to you, the way you make people feel at ease, the way you see the bright side, like a lot of stand-up comedians I met, a lot of them through you, they have like this more attachment to the dark side, which is good, like that's why they're funny, because they can resonate with all these things that people are like, oh shit, like that's exactly how I feel as well. But you've always been this very positive influence, and you can tell, like the moment I met you, I was like, wow, this guy really has something that I want to be around. He has this energy that I really resonate with. And what do you know? Like, it turns out I can provide something for you as well, and that's why we have a really beautiful friendship and a beautiful relationship. Right?
I love what you said about 60-60 instead of 50-50, because it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, where those extra 20%, where do they go, right? Like they go towards our future. Like that's growth, that's value, that's valuable, and that's valuable to both parties. But if you find yourself in a situation where, I'm not saying that it should always be 60-60. Sometimes your friend is going to need your help. Sometimes he's going to be at 20, he or she is going to be at 20%, and we are always there to pick up the 80 or 90%,
That's what friends do.
Right. But if you find yourself in a relationship where that's always the case, where you're always the person that puts in more effort, then that's something that you should address with your friend and be very upfront and honest about, because if not, you're not being a friend. And if that continues after you've had that conversation and again and again and again, right? Like then you have a problem that's bigger than that. I think we could really use a little bit more honesty in the world. I think it's up to each and every one to kind of like help each other to elevate and set expectations of how we expect our friends to be around you. And like I'm here now on this podcast, like it sounds so serious, like I don't want to make this like a super serious conversation, but as we're kind of like wrapping up that chapter, I think it's important for everyone to kind of like just take those 10 minutes a day. You don't have to sit down and meditate. You can just sit down and think about that relationship and just let it be and see what comes out, because there's a lot of magic that happens in the stillness when we're not constantly distracted with other things. And I think that's like the biggest benefit of making a little bit of space for yourself, to allow yourself to think and to allow yourself to feel,
Now, one thing we do talk a lot about, because I really hear what you're saying, one thing we talk a lot about on the podcast is the importance of having a network, a crew, if you will, other poker players that you can discuss hands with or talk about strategies, things like that. And you have a very impressive crew that you are a part of. do you feel like part of the requirements to be in that crew would be what we're talking about now, is that you're not always lifting the other person up, but sometimes that person is lifting you up as well? Is that something you look for in your, poker buddies, if you will?
Definitely, and I think it's like we're not like, if we're onboarding someone in the process of what we're doing, the things that we're looking for is that type of mindset. Like it's not only that. We're not expecting anyone to come in at a certain level, but it is a requirement just as a friend to be of the mindset of elevating others, or this is not the right place for you. And that varies. That varies on a scale from a minimum of 50% to 100%. And then that's how group dynamics work. But if you don't have 50%, then that's where we draw the line. If you're not coming in with at least 51%, you're just like trying, to get past that.
Yeah.
Then it's definitely not the right place, or not the right time. It doesn't have to be that it's not the right place, but it might just not be the right time in life, which we're always mindful of. And the times when I've had more professional relationships with friends, where I felt like we didn't have that reciprocal relationship, we always had a conversation. I always had a conversation with that person, and the nice thing about those conversations was that generally it was because their objectives were different, and they didn't know how to express that. I want to go to Mars instead of the moon, and I'm like, okay, but we're on a journey to the moon, so if you want to go to Mars, then we should probably like split ways here. And some people come to you and say that, and some people don't. But when I've had that conversation, it's always been a really nice one. It's always been a really good one. It's never been any bad blood. It's just like, all right, maybe I'll see you on Mars next time. Maybe you'll like venture to the moon and come for a vacation. So yeah, I think it's as long as the people that you work with have the right intention and like put in right effort, there's never any problems as long as you have good communication.
That's it. Communication is the key. I think I've heard that before. But yeah, maybe not in this exact context.
It was me.
Oh, is it you? Yeah. You have copyright rights, a trademark on that one. Communication is key.
Keep the royalties covered.
Yeah. You should be very, very rich from that. Forget the startup. Communication is key. All right. So let me ask you some more specific poker related questions, because I've noticed that you have been in the game for quite a while now, over a decade. And you've always been one of the best players that I know, one of the best players there are, but the game has changed a lot. So talk about how you used to play and what gave you success kind of early in your career when you were so young and new at this, but you kind of came bursting onto the scene and just had so much success early. But then as the game evolves, and now we hear about training sites and solvers and all these things that have sort of come into play after you were already established, at least online, and also on the EPT as well. So can I talk about that journey a little bit and how you've been able to adapt and stay, at or near the top of the poker world?
Relevant.
Yes. How have you stayed relevant?
Yeah. I mean, like I think it's kind of like it's humbling. When I started playing, I think I came from the right background. I'm very competitive. I used to play chess. I used to be pretty good at it, and I think that gave me like this edge in kind of understanding things by the nature and like what drives decision making in poker. And as people back then generally wasn't very strong technically, theoretically, we were all used to like kind of figuring out as we went. I think that's where my edge came from. And at some point that edge diminished when, like all these Ukrainian kids that I used to beat up on now started beating me, and it was bloody, like it was they beat me bad. I wasn't a loser in the games, but I wasn't like a big winner by any means, and I had to kind of think, is this what I want to continue doing? Like, is this my path? Is this what I want to get up in the morning, like being a punching bag for some Ukrainian 19-year-old? Like, is this what I want to do? And I decided to take some time off to recalibrate. I studied philosophy for 1 semester, and went to like engage myself a little bit politically. Went to a bunch of these like TEDx or Burning Man initiatives, just seeing what was out there, what was available. And as we all know, like poker is one of these games that keeps pulling us back in because it's so entertaining. It's just so thrilling to play the game. And I felt like, like I put in 10 years of my life in this, and I never got to a level that I can say that I'm like really proud of my accomplishments. I'm proud over how I did it at the time, and I'm proud over all the friends I made and the things I've learned and the places I've seen. But I never felt like I put in, like 100% of my effort. So coming out of that hiatus, I was much more sure than I was before that this is what I wanted to do. But in order to do that, I had to do it right. Like this time, let's do it right. And as so happens, I ended up final tabling this Party Poker Millions, the first one they had online. And a friend of mine is John Van Fleet, Ape Styles. So shout out. He was at the final table as well.
ACR Pro,
yeah,
Jonathan Van Fleet, yeah.
And Twitch streamer, great stream. So he was at the final table as well. As so happened to be first hand of the final table, I got dealt pocket kings. Some other guy got dealt pocket queens. And, we play like a top 3 stack pot where we get it in pre-flop and he wins. And I was so devastated, like I was so for a good 10 minutes I felt like life was unfair. I was like, what the fuck? Like I found myself in the spot, great spot, get it in great, and here I am. And you're getting like a 15 buy-ins back or something like that. And I was like, this was my spot, like how come I got robbed of this?
Yes.
And I just had to allow myself to give up. And then John reached out and he said, you know what, like let's, if you want, let's see that like the hands that we played together, and let's run through them. Let's do a little segment on this. And as we were doing that, I was like, wow, like this is how a professional works. Like this is how he answers these questions that we all have. Like this is how to do it. So the next step, like, okay, how can I start integrating this? How can I find the people to work with that can do this with me? Because doing it all myself, it seemed so overwhelming at the time.
Sure.
And then I just started trying out. I have a lot of friends. I'm a social guy. I know a lot of. I'm really drawn to very smart people. I think it's always so interesting to get to pick their brain and to see how they think about things. And having that surrounding just made it so that I could try. I try with some friends. It's like, okay, maybe they weren't as motivated as I am. Maybe they're going to Mars. But eventually I found the people that were going to the moon and that was going on the same type of path, and as we started this journey, we kept gravitating the same like-minded people because we made it fun. Like we're friends, we're working together, but it's supposed to be fun, or we shouldn't be doing it in the first place. And that's how I got started with like more in-depth solver work. And the role that I've taken on this journey is I'm not the data generator. I'm good at understanding heuristics, like what drives the computer to do X, Y, Z things, what kind of lies behind the strategy, integrating that, discussing it, seeing if we can tweak strategies in a way that's more beneficial, because we're not playing against the computer, and GTO it might be very fearful, you know. GTO is the computer trying to beat itself, and then not being able to do that anymore. Like, that's the baseline, right?
Sure.
So when you're playing against a human opponent, almost everyone in the game is not going to execute a computer strategy perfectly. So what you're trying to do is see where the baseline is, and that makes it so that you can understand how to deviate and when to deviate and why that is good or why that is bad. So I think before like getting into like, oh, should I have 4 c-bet sizings on this board, you might want to ask yourself a more fundamental question of like, what's going to render the biggest mistakes from my opponent? How can I challenge my opponent's strategy to be really tough? How can I simplify my strategy so that my decisions are kind of easy, you know? And from there, step by step, learn to integrate more depth, more analysis, more versatility in your game. Instead of trying to start with building Rome, you might want to start building the first road, you know? And taking that approach has led me to, I think, now a very high level of expertise in poker. Having all the tools available is a really big gift, but then you have to know, with any tool, you have to know how to use it, right?
Of course. And, back in the day, we didn't have all these tools, but even if we had, there still would have been so many people that would just be, absolutely drawing dead because they wouldn't understand how to use it. And they might not have the drive that you had to want to become so good. Now, I wonder, does Jonathan Van Fleet know the impact that he had on you? I mean, have you ever talked to him about that?
I have, yes.
Yeah,
of course. I mean, like, I reached out to him after I got established, and you said, like, thank you so much. Like, you're the ignition for this path that I'm on right now. And yeah, I'm good friends with him, and we talk poker every now and then, and I really like what he's doing in poker as well. He's like this very positive presence. He's a very, very kind and open person. I think we need a lot more in that. I guess we can kind of segue to something that's pretty dear to me, as I'm very passionate about poker. I'm passionate about the game. And I have a request for the listeners. I think this is really important for poker in general, is to see it not only as a game of gain, strategy, and battle, and all these things. Like, sure, like there's a large part of the game that's very important. You want to be competitive and you want to be in there and compete, but I think the other part is like, poker is an entertainment product. Poker is something that is a lot of fun. You can any given day beat the best player in the world, and there's not a lot of other games where you can do that. So as we have this entertainment product, what are you as a poker player? Are you only a poker player, or are you a poker player / entertainer? And I'm not saying that from like some like sociopathic, like, hey, let's butter these guys up, but no, like, just make sure that when you sit at a table, at least put in 51%, maybe 55, maybe 60, or maybe 80 on a bad day, because what that does is it makes it so that the people that come here that might not be on the same level, that might not be there for the same reasons as you are, they have an enjoyable experience and be a little bit sportsmanlike about it, Don't berate the guy who made a really bad play because he doesn't have the same knowledge as you do. As far as I'm concerned, you pay your entry fee to a tournament, you can do whatever the fuck you want with your chips. Or, I mean, like, sure, like you might get upset if someone puts a horrendous beat on you. I'm not saying like be a cold ass robot.
You're still a human, yeah.
But like, maybe just chuckle and be like, all right, well, that was great.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
That's the way it goes sometimes, you know, like, and by doing so, or like maybe ask the recreational at your table, like, hey, what's your story? You know, like maybe you'll get something from that as well. Like maybe you'll learn something you didn't know just playing poker. Maybe this guy runs a AI software company somewhere, you know, like maybe this guy has a crazy story of how he ended up playing this tournament or whatever. It's like forming these reciprocal relationships is just very something that provides value both for the individual that you're talking to, and you know, like you're great with this. I'm singing to the choir here a little bit because you really have that impact on people around you. You make it a very enjoyable experience for people. And you said this the other day. You're like, well, sometimes I'm not on, but I still make an effort. And I thought that was so admirable to like be a professional. You know, you show up at the table and you're like, well, I'm kind of funny, so I'm going to provide that for people. You know, I'm going to make an enjoyable experience for them. And lo and behold, you know, like 5 minutes later, you're having a really good time yourself. Like by doing so and mirroring yourself in other people, you're actually getting energy. Like it is at the end of the day, oftentimes a very self-serving thing to do, but it's a good self-serving. It's not the bad one.
No, I want that energy. Of course. Exactly. And that's why I'm on stage anyway. But yes, I absolutely could not agree with this more. Of course you are preaching to the choir here because I mean, I'm an entertainer. Of course I want to be entertained and I want to entertain. But yeah, there are some players where if I am in a great mood and I feel like being social and having some fun and maybe trying to make some people crack a smile or laugh, I feel sad for the people who think that if they laugh or if they smile, that they're giving up something, like part of their edge. Like people have the misconception that part of your edge at the table is how serious you can be. You know, that doesn't affect the cards or the chips or anything else or the strategy of the game. It doesn't mean that just because we're having fun that you're not really, really, really trying to win. You are, but it doesn't really cost you anything to try to make it more fun for everybody. And that's true when you're playing poker or paying the toll when you go across the bridge or buying candy at the drugstore. I don't care what you're doing. Trying to bring a little bit of joy to other people's lives. There's no reason why poker has to exclude that part of human nature. We all want to have fun. Everybody. Not just girls. Right? Girls just want to have fun, but so do boys.
That's it.
Now, speaking of boys who like to have fun, I know you had a hand we were supposed to talk about. If you have time, I know you have dinner plans and everything, but if I can get you to go through your hand, because it's with a very well-known player who I have sat with for many, many, many hours at the Rio, and he is a fun-loving guy.
Yeah, he is. So the person we're talking about is Tony Miles.
Yes.
The second place finisher, and was it the last WSOP main event, or was it the one before that? It
was 2018, which was the year that I got my deep run.
That's it.
And so I sat with Tony for a very long time. He is a fun character to have at your table. He's a fun-loving guy for sure.
Yeah, and formidable player, great competitor. You know, very competitive guy, but like he leaves it all at the table, right? Like he is the type of person that would lose the pot and still say, "Hey, let's go to dinner." You know, like it's more rare than it should be.
Yeah.
But I had the pleasure and the displeasure of having him on my left in the 5K 8 max here at the World Series, and I played a interesting pot against him that I think I ended up making a mistake in. I haven't fact checked this hand in a solver, so you know I'm just not sure, but I think I can discern that it was a small mistake. But let's talk about the things I did well. Right?
Okay, yeah, so, let's talk through the hand. I think people would love to hear about how you approach a hand and the way you think about it during the game and also afterwards. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so folds to me in the hijack. I have a queen jack of diamonds. So I have an
open every
auto
time,
open to 2.5x. We're playing, somewhere between, I guess, like 50 and 100 big blinds effective with the players behind.
Okay.
So 2.5x. Tony's in the next seat. He 3-bets to, like 3.3x sizing. So 8 point something big blinds.
Okay.
I think my decision here folds to me. My decision is quite clear. I have a hand that pretty much always wants to call. So I end up calling. The flop is the 10, 9, I think it was a 3, 4, or a 5. So I flop an open-ender. There is 2 hearts on the flop and 1 spade. I have diamonds, so I check. Tony bets around half the pot.
Okay, so now we have the open-ender.
Overs.
And 2 overs, right? We have an open-ender, 2 overs, probably, at least some of the time they're going to be live. We don't have any backdoor flush, right? So, yeah, I think we can call. I think you could also maybe do the check raise. We're not really sure exactly how many chips we have.
Oh, well, we're playing around 75 big blinds effective
okay.
pre-flop. So we're playing, there's 20 bigs in there, and we have 65 big blinds back, so a little over 3 SPR.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think with that, I would probably prefer calling.
I think it's a little deep. Like, we just have too much equity to, like, I think we want to be quite polarized in our check racing because... we have some hands that really want to get in. We have 10-9, pocket 9s, pocket 10s, bottom set. And I think we have stronger draws that has more equity that we can push.
Queen Jack of Hearts.
Well, right.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, I think Queen Jack of Hearts might be also too strong. It's too strong in check raise. Like you can easily check call twice with a hand like that. But you might have a low gutter and an open-ended. You might have, ace 4 of hearts that can clean out better ace highs that also has like nutted equity, and if we get it in against anything but like a set or pocket aces, we're in great shape, right?
Makes sense.
So like step 1 is in this triple threat type of mindset. It's like, what am I accomplishing by this? Am I pushing out a dominating hand? Will King Jack fold to check raise? Like probably not. You might get shoved on, which would be really terrible. And I think our hand just plays really well as a call. I would probably, just for the sake of playing against a tough opponent, you should probably check raise it at a very low frequency in order to have some of these hands in your range. So you can look at the clock. You can say, if it's the first 10 seconds of a minute, then I might want to consider check raising it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's going to be mostly calling.
Okay.
So I call. The turn is a very interesting card. It's the Jack filling the front flush draw.
Oh, so it's Jack of Hearts.
Yeah.
So now
it's 10-9, 5-4-3, something like that, and a Jack that fills the front flush.
Okay.
So now, what ends up happening and why solvers are so great in this way is like there's a huge equity shift. The equity in this hand shifts drastically. Like I've already strengthened my range by calling the flop. I have something that wraps around this card. I have a few more suited hands than he has. Like I think we have the similar not straight, but I think I have a slight advantage on this board. And what ends up happening in solver land, when you have a slight advantage to solver, you say, ooh, I can make a little bit of EV here. And so I decide to lead, which I think is a very strong play. I think leading for mostly a small size here is good. What ends up happening is you have a lot of hands like my hand. You might have something like Queen 9 suited, Queen 10 suited that wants to take the initiative, that wants to be able to bluff a river. You want to push some equity. You also don't want him to check behind when you have flush, when you have turn top 2, like you have all these hands that are very interested in getting a bet in. And as for him, since I have more of the nutted hands and I'm leading a very high frequency here and I'm leading all those hands, he's kind of handcuffed to calling as I continue, because by implementing races, he allows me to repolarize my range. Now we're getting into like all these fancy words of like how that works, but by doing so, he's just putting too much money into the top of my range, basically, and he's taking away his positional advantage. So when a card lands, that's generally a lot better for the out of position range. You should be leading quite a high frequency in order to not be facing, like a big bet with his polar part of his range, and also challenge a lot of hands like ace king, ace queen, like all these hands that are now like very indifferent, like their life is really terrible. They could be drawing dead, if they don't have a flush card, they're in really poor shape. Or he has a hand like ace 10 that flop top pair, top kicker, like all these hands are now put in a really bad spot.
Yeah, ace 10 hates that jack so much because it's not only an overcard to my pair, but now it's the flush got there, straights got there. It's just a brutal card. But can you just back up for a second, if you could, and help people, including me, understand why this card is so much better for your range than it is for Tony's? I mean, doesn't he have all the flushes too?
Well, if he's 3-betting 100% of his suited aces, if he's 3-betting 100% of his king-queen suited, queen-jack suited, not queen-jack suited because that's now a flush, but he doesn't have a lot of those combinations. And since the jack and 10 is suited, he doesn't have ace 10 suited, ace jack suited. So now he's stuck with like ace king suited, ace queen suited, some suited wheel aces.
And wrong color.
Because I'm assuming that he plays a very fundamentally strong pre-flop strategy. If you have a guy that's 3-betting all of his continues here, you might end up in a completely different spot, which is also a point for solver work being very dependent on the input that you give it, right? But I think I have a decent idea of the range that he would 3-bet pre-flop, and that doesn't contain so many flushes. It's just he's not gonna 3-bet too many of the suited connectors that make a flush. I'm always going to have all those. He's not going to 3-bet all these middling suited aces that is probably his calling in the cutoff. He's 3-betting them sometimes, sure, but I have all those hands. So that's where I have the flush advantage on this board.
Great. So you having the flush advantage can lead small here, possibly with the intention of bombing it on the river if it's a brick. Because you're representing a flush way better than he can.
Yeah, and back to my specific hand, I have top pair and an open-ended, right?
So you don't have nothing. You've got a strong hand already.
I got a pretty strong hand. I'm beating a lot of his, one flush card, ace king, ace queen, and that type of stuff. So, which leads me to what I think is my mistake in the hand.
Okay.
So he calls, which is not too surprising. He's gonna, call all of his strong hands, call some decent draws, and call things that are just too good that he needs to continue, because I still have a lot of semi bluffs and somewhat questionable hands like the queen 9, queen 10. So he can't just always end up folding an ace 10 because it's gonna be the best hand a large amount of the time.
Also, you offer him a pretty good price, 4-1.
Well, right, but he's still in a very bad spot with his hands. I'm making a hand like ace 10 is a perfect example of a hand that starts being very indifferent in this line.
Right. Okay, great.
So the river is now a 7. So it's 10-9, 5-4-3, turn jack, river 7. So it's a 4-liner to an 8 making a straight. The flush hit on the turn, and my decision is, should I check? Should I bluff this hand? The way the board runs out, I have a lot more 8x than he does. I have all these 2 pairs. I have more flushes than he does, and probably a little bit more king-queen, especially king-queen suited type stuff than he does pre-flop, depending on what his strategy looks like.
And even though we don't have king king queen this time. We block it.
Yeah.
Because we have the queen. Now, this is interesting because it sounds to me like you're considering bluffing with top pair, which is something we normally don't do, right?
Well, I figured, and here's, I think, like my logic flawed a little bit. I figured like this was also such a good card for my range, and he still has, I mean, like there's just so many hands that are different, like aces, kings, queen, ace jack, ace 10. Like there's just so many hands that are still like, okay, I still have all these flushes, I have all these straights, I have 2 pair to this line.
And he has very few 8s in his 3-betting range,
exactly.
right? Yeah, so okay.
So I think in hindsight, when I've like ran this hand through my head, I think I should just be ending up checking a hand like this and consider bluff catching if he bets the river. I should definitely be bluffing with my queen 10, queen 9, as they're like ending up at the very bottom of my range. I think it's fine, from a balance perspective to bet my specific hand as kind of like this mergy bluff type of thing. I still like have so much value to this line that it's not gonna it's not a punt by any means. I do, however, think the stronger play is to check my specific holding and bluff anything worse than my hand kind of thing on this run out. I ended up bluffing because bluffing is fun. Or kind of bluffing and just like praying like, please don't shove in my face.
Right. So how much, what percentage of the pot did you put in there?
I bet 1/3 again.
1/3 again.
Which I think on the river I'm going to be playing a split strategy. I think on the turn my lead is going to be 1/3. I like to simplify my strategy. Like a solver would probably like to have some percentage of bigger leads as well, but I'm just going to play like a lead range third of my continuous. Some hands like to check, but the hands that I lead for 1/3.
Okay, so now we can get called by worse, right? He can look us up with ace 10. Some of the hands we mentioned, I think we can get action from with this bet, right?
We could, but
sometimes,
but like that's kind of the problem, right? Like our hand is just like slightly too good to bluff. I think like our hand like pretty much hits the line of what is acceptable and what is not. I think it makes for a really good like check call type of candidate as well. We're blocking the king queen, we're blocking him having pocket jacks or pocket queens, and,
right.
hands that even could consider value betting the river. So I think like I should be playing some checks. I can't just be completely dead in the check line. So I think our hand makes for a pretty excellent check on the river.
And you probably call.
But I think more importantly, I mean, like it's a very minor mistake. I can put that in. It's on the line, right?
It's on the line.
Yeah. But I think a stronger play is to check it. And then I think you should also have 2 sizes. You should have an all-in sizing on the river. And this is going to go for like, you could be 150 deep, take this line. You should still have an all-in sizing for like 3 times the pot on the river. There's just some hands that are so incentivized to, like a nut flush type of hand that didn't check raise a flop, that is drilled the nut flush on the turn, that doesn't really like block. So like a nut flush that has no pair type of thing is a great candidate to just go for like as much as possible. And then picking some hands that match that type of range and some complete garbage that goes in. And then you want to have a 1/3 lead on the river that's going to contain some flushes, maybe a nut flush that contains a pair as well, that like blocks some of his, like say 2 pair hero calls and stuff like that. You want to, for balance purposes, never have the nut flush when you're betting. And that's going to go into more like a 1/3 river. Like say you have a straight with an 8, it's not strong enough to put all your chips in the pot, but it's definitely worth a value bet. You're going to have some turn 2 pair, I think makes for a great candidate. I think like king queen might want to mix the 2 sizings, right? So like now we're getting to this interesting part of the game tree, which if you play good ranges pre-flop and you have an idea of what your opponent does, you're just ending up in this kind of like vacuum situation where you kind of know what type of hands your opponents have, and you also know clearly what type of hands that you have to this line. And what you're trying to do is make his decision as like hellish as possible, right? Like, so like everywhere he turns is going to be like and if you do that, you've done a good job. So,
yeah, no matter the outcome, that's what you're trying to do. Make his life hard.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you have some reason and you're like, wow, every time someone plays a really small bet on this river, this guy just goes for it, right? Like, then once you have more information, then
use it.
Then use it, right? Like, use it to the best of your knowledge. And I think it's a great hand. It really sums up the game in a nice way. We get to place 3 streets, 2 that are, like somewhat mundane, like we can discern like, okay, this is probably the best play, and then we get to place in the hand where it's like, okay, so like, what are my strategic options? Like, how can I make it so that it's so tough for this very smart, tough player to play against my strategy, right?
So help me understand, because you're just on another level, and I'm trying to keep up as best I can. Why is checking with this hand better than leading for 1/3 pot? In a nutshell, why is that better?
Because I don't think we get called by worse enough, and we have a hand that blocks, hero calls. So what we're ending up doing is we allow ourselves to be bluffed for the entire pot. If he shoves, if he has like ace queen with a diamond, for instance, or with a heart, it's a great bluffing opportunity for him to say like, oh, well, I guess you don't have the nuts because I have the ace, so I'm just gonna push it in your face. And here we are with top pair blocker to the straight, and now it's us having the really shitty decision, right? Because we know that he's like, if he finds himself with this type of combo, he's probably gonna go for it, right?
Yeah.
So now
I can tell you, Tony is more than capable. Even before he won $4 million, he's more than capable of making all those plays you just described. Yeah.
Exactly. So now by treading ever so slightly across the line, we allowed ourselves with a hand that really doesn't like getting bluffed to be bluffed for like, bluffing our pants and our shoes off, and by doing so also we expose ourselves in our checking line, because we're going to be leading a very high frequency on this river, and we need to have some hands that makes for really good calls on the river as we check.
So it plays better overall as a bluff catcher.
Right. And, like if he goes all in on the river, we have a really tough decision. But our hand is going to perform really well in this line against a tough player. And then you just have to look him dead in the eye and say, do you have it?
And watch them crumble under your stare.
Real poker.
Well, guys, if you're out there and you're wondering, what you need to do in order to play at a high level in high stakes major events, just so you know, Anton is typical of what some of your opponents will be doing mentally away from the table. So you've got to be willing to put in the work to get this good, or else you will essentially be drawing dead versus the likes of Anton Wigg. So yeah, I mean, every time I talk poker with you, it expands my thinking and my overall poker knowledge, and just the way you approach the game. What I really like about this is that you believe in theory. You understand that the solver is absolutely essential. Nowadays, if you're not working with solvers at all, you are being left behind because people are doing that work, right? But you also understand the importance of finding your opponent's mistakes, and that's better. Like, if you can actually identify someone's mistake, that's really where the money comes from, because all the solver can teach you to do is how to be unbeatable. It doesn't teach you how to be most profitable, right?
Yeah, and another note as well, like, another note is not just the theoretical work. The theoretical work is, let's call it the preparation.
Yeah.
But the actual work that you do is, of course, you need to be able to identify these things, but then to be in a state of mind where you can identify these things, where you're not, either thrown into a loop of like, oh my God, what if he shoves on me here? That's like the only thing that runs through your head when you're playing a pot on the river. Like, you have to be coherent, and you have to be in this triple threat mindset in order to even be able to make rational decisions. So, Dune quote, fear is the mind killer, and how to avoid those things is to come well prepared and to be coherent, to think about things in a chain of logic events, or like you paid attention in the pod previously, you saw that this guy, he did this one thing with his chips, or his back is really straight when he has a really good hand.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the edge comes from being present, and from that point of view, you can really do more than just the theory. The theory makes it so that you can relax. The theory makes it so that that the play that you make is fundamentally strong. But then you also have to have the mental awareness and readiness and energy levels in order to execute those and pick up on like small pieces of information that can lead you to making a more educated decision. And I find that this is something that all the strongest players have, except for the people that are very good at executing like robotic strategies. I think all the very high level players, they're very good at paying attention, at being there and being present and think through things and not have all these emotions coming up when playing a poker hand. And again, I think our job is to do that during the hand. Like if someone is like continuing a conversation, you're like, please, I need to focus on this hand, and then we can get back to talking. But as soon as the hand is over, you just leave that there. Or if you're curious about the hand, take down a note, do the work off the tables, and the next time you're going to run into the same situation, you're going to be prepared, instead of just, oh my god, I played that hand like shit, and now I'm going to shovel it into the pile of shit hands that I played throughout my career. and not learn anything from it, right? Like then you're ending up in the same spot and you're like, what was it again? I don't remember. I'm just gonna, please don't race me.
And putting yourself in those vulnerable circumstances where you might end up being victim again to someone putting you in that awful spot because you allowed yourself, you left yourself open. It's almost like a boxer who lets his guard down. We can't do that in poker. You've got to play defense too, right?
So just a little like encouragement for people, that it's like, it's not just, you can meet a lot of people that have studied more theory than you have, but if you're in a more ready, set, go position, you're gonna outperform them every time. And that it's just having grit and persistence and finding a way that works for you. Like it's not a golden bullet, like one thing, this one pill is gonna take care of everyone's problems. Like everyone is different, people have different styles of playing, and I think if we can maintain the energy to be present, then we're also getting the results we want long term. And if you can do whatever you need to do off the table, whether it's studying or working out or taking 10 minutes a day to think about the things that you want to think about, I think that's where you're going to get the biggest edge. So you're just taking it away from this, like, you have to kind of solve the game to be the best. I think starting at the right point and understanding, like, what are the driving forces behind it, and then figuring out, so how can I do this in a way that fits me in my personal life, and that makes sure that I'm not just a poker player, that I'm also like there and present for my friends and family and all these other things that makes me have good energy and that makes me feel like I'm in the right place at the right time,
Well, you do have good energy. Yeah, I mean, I always love being around you, and a lot of that has to do with the energy that you give off. I feel like you love everybody until they give you a reason not to, and then you just disregard them. But there's not a lot of hate in your heart. It's like either love or disregard, but not a lot of hate. And I always love that about you. I know you don't do a lot of interviews, and I know I kept you way too long on this one. You're going to be late for your dinner appointment, which I'm very sorry. It's just I didn't want to stop you when you were dropping all that knowledge. So I'm going to let you go, and I just want to thank you for being a rare, giving us a rare chance to talk to you and get inside your brilliant mind just a little bit. So I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you. Arigato gozaimasu.
Arigato. Is there anything that people should know? Do you want them to follow you on Instagram, or what's happening? You want to reveal any projects you have in the works? Anything at all you want to tell everybody about?
Well, if you have any questions, or if you need help with anything, or if you want a week free on the Waking Up app for meditation and mindfulness, my only social media that is open to the public is my Twitter. So it's Anton_WIGG. Not sure why I picked underscore, but hey, there it is.
There it is.
So yeah, if you want to get in touch, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, stay present, stay happy, stay humble, and don't forget to have fun.
Be present, be prepared, be a triple threat. Anton Wigg, it's at Anton_Wigg, WIGG. Follow him on Twitter. I promise you will be glad that you did. Anton, thank you so much for being with us today. So for Anton Wigg and for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
Viva Las Vegas.
That's awesome.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas, please. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Lock in intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa,